All right. My name is Lisa White. I am here with the Preble County Historical Society as the Executive Director on Friday, February 11th, 2022. Hello. Can you please state your full name? Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you grew up, your family, and how you spend your time.
I'm Elaine Buckler. I grew up on a farm south of Richmond, Indiana, and I have had a sister and 4 brothers. We lived on a farm. I recently retired, so now I'm looking to do a little bit of traveling and catching up on writing and reading. A lot of that's going to be about the Holocaust. So,
very, very good. Can you tell us about your father, his name, his birth date, and where he grew up and lived?
My dad's name was Paul Buckler. He was born and raised in Brookville, Indiana.
And when was his birthday? Do you have his birthday?
Yeah. He was born November 30th, 1925.
Wonderful. And where did he grow up and live?
He was from Brookville, Indiana.
He was also?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Just explain in your own words about your father's experience in the military during the Holocaust time.
Actually, he volunteered for the Army in 1944 because he felt like it was his duty to go to war if he needed to. He completed his basic training in Camp Walters, Texas. And on his 19th birthday, he was on the boat headed to Europe, landing at Marseille, France. After some time in combat, he began to wonder if it was worth the tremendous loss the Americans endured until his unit reached Dachau concentration camp. At that time, he knew that the Nazis had to be stopped.
If you can tell us a little bit about his Bronze Star.
He was awarded the Bronze Star July of 1945, and the reason he got it, I'll read. With his company widely dispersed in defensive positions and its outposts linked by telephones, Sergeant Buckler, company communications sergeant, worked untiringly under enemy fire to establish and maintain wire communication between the most forward elements and the battalion command post. Many times he was a target for artillery, mortar, and small arms fire as he repaired lines leading to squad observation posts. But in every case, he completed his mission. By his courage and devotion to duty, Sergeant Buckler made an effective contribution to his unit's successful defense of the area. Entered military service from Brookville, Indiana.
Who were some of your father's influences and friends who helped him get through the terrible time in history?
Dad's hope to get home to his family was the biggest motivation. A psychic even told him later on that his deceased grandmother was with him during the war. He also had a very tight-knit group of men in his unit, including several officers he highly admired.
What would you say is the biggest misconception from us about the Holocaust?
Many people deny that it happened, and a lot of people don't understand what happened. A big reason is it's been so many years. It's been so long ago that people begin to forget or never studied it. So I think the biggest thing is either denying it or forgetting the atrocities of the Holocaust.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience traveling? I know you had said that you had gone there to visit.
Yeah, in 1995, my father, mother, and my brother and his wife and I traveled back to Dachau concentration camp for the 50th anniversary of the liberation of the camp, along with about 170 other veterans and their families. What an emotional trip. We got to meet hundreds of the survivors from the camp, and it was such an emotional healing time for both the survivors and the veterans. The survivors were just so grateful. They hugged the veterans, they thanked them, and cried over and over. It was such an emotional trip, and it's one trip that I'll never forget. It's one of the highlights of my life.
Did you say that you went back? You went twice. Did you go 2 times?
Yes. We also went in 1998 to some of the battlefields in France and Germany.
What else would you like to know about this time in history?
Probably the atrocities of the concentration camps. There was thousands of concentration camps throughout Europe, and the millions of Jews and others that were gassed and killed by the SS guards was just so overwhelming, and one of the biggest atrocities, I think, in humankind.
What was your dad's role in this time?
April 29th, 1945, Dad's unit approached Dachau concentration camp and liberated it, along with other units of the 7th Army. He said that, well, actually, I'd like to read a letter that he talked about that.
Please.
This is in Dad's own words. He wrote this in 1999. April 1945, I was in the 42nd Division, which liberated the town of Dachau and the concentration camp with other units of the 7th Army. The railroad cars, as we entered the camp, were most striking, with about 1,500 dead bodies. 3 SS guards surrendered to me and a friend at this point. Taking them to a compound, we passed the thousands of Jews and political prisoners in the camp. The people in the camp began to shake their fists and spit and yell at the SS prisoners. We stopped and said between us how fitting it would be if we threw them into where the Jews and others were unjustly kept. They would have torn them apart. But we decided that that would be as barbaric as the Germans, so we took them to the compound. We were searching for more guards and went into the mayor's house in town. The mayor came in as we were searching and became very angry. But when a Tommy gun was pointed at his middle, he left the house. Most of the men were battle-hardened, but when they saw what happened at this camp, some threw up, some cried. April 1995, my wife and I, my daughter Elaine, son Don and his wife, traveled back to Dachau for the 50th anniversary of the liberation of the camp. About 170 veterans and families were there, and hundreds of survivors. I found out then that the mayor in 1945 was indeed a Nazi. He had gone underground for 3 years and could not be found, but they do find him. He is put on trial and is sentenced to 10 years in jail. We talked to many survivors. They told us personal experiences, thanked us, hugged us, and cried over and over. What a wonderful and thrilling experience to have helped someone under these conditions. Somehow this made the very hardships of war worthwhile. Sergeant Paul Buckler, Company G, 232nd Regiment, 42nd Division. And I'd like to add that at that time, that trip was so emotional for the veterans and the survivors. It was a healing time for both the veterans and the survivors.
Can you do your best to describe what it looked like? What someone would see if they were there, since you were there to see it?
In '95,
Mm-hmm.
we were in Munich at this huge castle, I would call. It was called Kaiser Hall. A big room, tall ceilings, hundreds of people in that room, big room, and people were trying to communicate in so many different languages. And crying and hugging and thanking and just so emotional. And a lot of survivors told their personal experiences about they heard that they were going to be killed because the Germans knew that the Allies were coming, and so they were going to destroy the camp and them also. And so they were just waiting to see if the Americans got there before they were killed. And then when they first saw the Americans, they were just overjoyed. And of course, a lot of the Germans vacated the camp. So it was such a wonderful experience to hear all those people talking about their experiences.
I'm sure it was such a visual time where you were probably so enthralled in your emotions that you just couldn't help but just look around and just watch.
Yep.
And watch these people interact and sometimes fall back and feel like you were there, like yourself.
Absolutely. When they talk, the survivors, a lot of times it was through interpreters, but we got their message. They were so thrilled, and when they talk about their experiences, it takes you back. We visited Dachau camp, and so you had these visions in your mind as they were talking and what they were talking about, and it was just to watch them. They would grab my dad and try to talk to him and hug him and things like that and tell their stories, and then somebody else would grab him like they were doing with all the veterans. They were just trying to tell them their stories, and yeah, to stand back and watch that was just phenomenal.